Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Town Board work session for Tuesday, November 17th, 2020. We have the first item on our agenda for this evening is the assessor software proposal. We have Josh Herman, our town assessor, to explain this topic to everyone.
Thank you, Ivy. Thanks, everybody, for having me here tonight. A couple months ago, Ivy had received an email from one of our residents with regard to this special software called Comper, which is a public-facing tool that allows folks to go on at their leisure to search sales of similar size and style homes and let them have an idea of how their assessment is equitable or not. So I did some research and I spoke with the salesperson who hails from Northern Ireland, and the product seems pretty interesting. There's a bridge that's built between our current software and this Comper software, and it uploads at our schedule, whether it's daily, weekly, monthly, and it just allows folks to go on at any point, and it's certainly helpful around grievance time when folks are sort of anxious about their assessment, and it closes in very rapidly. The past couple of years have been just a short window to grieve. So, with that said, we had this proposal. I was able to speak with colleagues around the country who are using this software, Oklahoma, Georgia, North Carolina, right next door in the town of Ramapo. And, I think that while it's a little expensive as far as transparency and equity of the assessment role, I think it's something that the town board should consider.
Is there a community that is using it similar to the way, we would be using it, that we could see it in action?
The town of Ramapo, which is just across the Hudson River, has been using it for at least a year. And everyone that I interviewed was thrilled with the product. If you were to go on to the town of Ramapo website, you could certainly take it for a test drive. We could do it together.
As in now, or just at some other time, just when we want to check it out?
You're gonna put me on the spot?
Well, I'm not putting you on the spot. Is it that? Do you really think it's that much of an asset and it's that valuable and that great of a tool that it'll be worth the dollars?
So that's an interesting point. So I think that in this year, where my budget was expanded due to certiorari refunds and potential appraisal impacts, this might be something that we could look at. If it's not in the budget, it's $12,500 for the first year, and then it drops down to $7,500 thereafter. In a year whereas we don't have those additional expenses, maybe it would be time to revisit it at that point.
That aside, in terms of our finances, which sounds like a silly question, but is what you're getting for that amount of dollar a good buy, if you will?
I asked every one of the folks that I interviewed about the product and how many hits they would get per month or per year, and none of them kept that data. So, that's something that we would roll out if we were going to go with that. And then we would obviously track it, and we would see. But I can't answer that question.
Okay.
It would have to be a good public relations rollout. We would have to let everyone know. Maybe even have a tutorial with it. It's pretty easy to. Where'd everybody go?
I'm here.
Oh, awesome!
I'm sharing my screen.
Look at you.
I know. Zoom. It's so wonderful.
It really is. Josh, can I just ask, what currently exists now? What do residents do or use, or what is this? What would this be replacing? Is the question.
It wouldn't be replacing anything. It would be something that would be brand new.
Okay,
Currently, and since I've been the assessor in Newcastle since 2015, historically we meet with at least 200 different homeowners annually prior to putting out the assessment roll in June, meeting with them informally. Many of them rely on Zillow, which is sort of the bane of our existence because of the inaccuracy of the square footages. This past year was more trying than normal because folks were in lockdown and they didn't have a lot to do but plug their information into Zillow, and then they would be getting these alerts, and I'd be getting phone calls that we would have to research and explain, which is fine. But this may help to mitigate some of that, and it would allow for folks to be able to provide an educated report and give them something to be able to bring into us and talk to.
So it saves you more money in terms of your time and energy as opposed to giving, you're saving time and money.
Well,
Because if you're getting a reasonable comp or someone's looking and saying, wait a second, you know what, Zillow says X, but this program says, Comper says Y, I'm way off. I shouldn't waste Josh's time with this nonsense. Maybe extreme, but.
that would be one way, or the other end could be, hey, I've got 6 sales here that show that, the range of value is between X and Y, and my house is clearly overassessed, and then I would just be able to adjust it based on that. So yes,
This is telling you like not just the sale price, but the assessed value. Like that's the big difference between what you can find on Zillow.
So the main problems that I've found with Zillow is that it combines below grade and above grade square footage. So
Sure.
it will skew a price per square foot. So if your house is 3,500 square feet and you're looking at other houses that have sold for 5,000 square feet for less money than you're assessed for, it's because they've combined those 2 square footages. And so we just have to go in and do the research and explain why it is what it is.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Josh, is this software that you need to continue entering information from? Where does it draw the information from? So is the setup you give them the information and then you need to continuously update this in order for it to be accurate, or how does it update?
My understanding is that we update our sales every week with a new batch of deeds from Westchester County, and with that, there would be a bridge that would be set up from Comper. And let's say our deeds are done, we start them on Monday and the process ends by Friday. Maybe Friday night, we would have a data dump and they would just sort of bring that over and then it would be added to the platform.
So not really any extra work for you or your office.
It would not be extra work for us. I think that in theory, I think it's a great product. There's not a lot of software out there. We are in the midst of a software conversion, and we're looking at that in the end of the first quarter of 2021. We could wait to see how that conversion happens and make a decision at that point once we know what we have as far as our new software.
Okay.
But our new software isn't going to give us a public-facing tool like this. It's not.
It would not.
No.
It would not. But it's as they have developed this new software, it's conceivable that they could make something like this in the future.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Sorry.
Does it give you tools that you can then share with those filing agreements? Like, if they have submitted, they think are reasonable comps, and then there's an error and they're thinking about that you can kind of say, I'm going to push you over 10 comps that are appropriate for your property, to use it as a vehicle for communication between your committee and the your function and those filing grievance?
Definitely. It definitely would make our public relations better because they could see exactly what we see. And it sort of demystifies the whole process. I mean, you have a range of value, and ultimately what we do is an art and not a science. But when folks can sort of get into the seeing how the sausage is made, I think that would be the main benefit. You know, it's just a matter of getting folks used to using it, and
we'll all of a sudden find it will give birth to all these assessors wannabes, people who want to grow up to be assessors.
I don't think anybody wants to grow up to be an assessor.
Well, you don't want to give the magic out. You don't want him to come in and take the job.
Do you think that that if we were to have this tool available for our community, it would result in an increased number of successful grievances?
You know, we have a very equitable assessment role. We sort of talk about this every year when the reassessment conversation comes up. You know, there's outliers for sure. This year we were down overall by 30% with our grievances, and a little bit more than that with our scars. So I think that with the COVID bounce, I think that really has bolstered the equity in the role. You know, if we'd had this conversation in February, I would have told you, you know, doom and gloom. But that's certainly not the case at this point. And I don't think it would add to more challenges because I think that folks it actually might diminish it because they would see that they're correctly assessed.
Great. So I think it's super cool. I really do. And I think it would be a really neat service to offer people here. And I think people would really like it. But I think you raised a really interesting question about the transition to the new version of the assessor software that you're using now. And just maybe before we pull the trigger on this, or before I would want to pull the trigger on this, I shouldn't speak for everybody. It might be interesting to go back to them, your current software developer, and just ask whether they have anything in their sort of product development stream that includes a public-facing tool like this.
I could definitely do that. And the other question I would have for the Comper folks would be, if we were to start this in January, would they then put another conversion fee on top of it when we go to this other software, which we certainly would want to delay?
Great.
Just remind me what this costs.
So the first year is $12,500, and that includes the $5,000 setup fee. And then each year after, it's $7,500. I would try to negotiate out. You know, it's sort of a double-edged sword. Do you negotiate out 5 years at a reasonable or no increase with the risk of we don't like the software? Or do we try to go for a shorter term? And, you know, so we would have to think about those options too.
And Josh,
So, yeah, good.
I just have a question on the costs, because I don't see that in the costs that we included in the executive session packet. It looks like
Yeah,
it's a little lower than that. And so you're saying year one is 12,500 and then 7,500 thereafter. This quote says 10,000 and 5,000. So was there?
So there's actually two products that was in that separate email that
Yes.
I'm not sure was included in the packet, but
Oh.
so there's Comper, and then there's Comper for Citizen, and one is the public facing, one is the internal.
Okay.
Got it. So interesting, we had our League of Women Voter budget presentation this morning, and we had
Well attended.
And Rob did a fabulous job. But one of the things he highlighted was the fact we had a lean budget this year, and we actually have not provided funds for this. And it's not like we have any like hidden pockets that you can steal from, Peter to pay Paul sort of thing. There just isn't. So if it's something that proves out that the board is really interested in, unless our financial situation changes during the course of 2021, I would put it down for a 2022 wish. And that would give us an opportunity to see how the conversion works in 2021. And, be in a position that we're only uploading the information, doing the conversion once.
And I think, Josh, you also mentioned that when the conversion does happen, we're going to run parallel with the old system for a period of
Little bit.
time.
Yeah.
As well, I think we're all a little unsure how this is going to go. I guess everybody's in it all at once. There's no betas. We're all getting in at the same time. Is that correct?
That is
And we're
correct.
all very optimistic it's going to work really, really well. But
I am optimistic. We will have to run a dual platform for our first assessment roll for, God willing, it'll be for 2021.
Right.
And then once we know that there are no bugs and everything is fine and everything carries over, then we'll leave pass in the dust and go for pass 2.0.
okay.
Do they offer a pilot window where you could essentially, use it for a few months before you commit to the contract, or once they set it up with the setup fee, that's it?
I could find that out for you, and give her a call. I wouldn't know that answer just because I don't know what kind of work goes into setting up the platform for it to draw the information over. But if you'd like, I could do some research for you.
Sure.
Okay.
Anything else for Josh?
I didn't put everybody to sleep.
No. Assessment stuff is so
Oh, that's me.
interesting. Stop it.
Up next.
Thanks, Josh.
All right.
Thanks,
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, Josh. Hi, Josh.
Rob has some really good news, though. It's going to, definitely keep everyone spellbound.
I got a preview
Yeah,
this
go
morning.
for it.
I do have good news. So are we ready for me now?
Yes.
Okay, so I am going to share my screen. So if everyone remembers, this is the third time now we're updating this in 2020 for the pandemic. And, I'll preface this by saying, like I have each time, I'm a very conservative to almost pessimistic budgeting person, especially when it comes to revenues. So I'm really kind of looking at what the worst case could be in this situation to kind of prepare us and to see how we can mitigate that. So my projections have changed markedly since April. So I'll look at one side first, and we'll look at the revenues first. And if you remember the situation we were in back in April, the economy was just on the verge of shutting down completely. We had really pessimistic. We were very fearful of what the county sales tax would be. The county themselves were worried about that number. We were worried about that number. A budgetary figure for us was $3.3 million a year, which makes it our largest non-tax revenue source in the general fund. So to miss on this number would have really been detrimental to us. So back in April, if you'll get the column here, I projected out, I took what we budgeted, and I've kind of left the columns in there to see where we've progressed from. So back in April, I had a very pessimistic viewpoint, as you can see. As we've gone through and we've got some clarity, a lot of these sources have either performed up to the standards of the budget or even exceeded it in very many cases. So where we are in November now, we're looking a lot better. So I'll just go through a few of them. The first one that I point out is property tax penalties. We usually budget about $400,000 a year. We're actually right now at $447,000. I imagine it'll probably be even more than 450. I actually know from the tax office today, they got two sizable lien payments in, which typically include a significant penalty in that. So, so that number probably will go up even higher.
Why would the penalties be higher this year, considering the payment period was extended?
Well, so it's interesting. A lot of these that are coming in are for liens from prior years.
Ah, okay.
So that's where a lot of these penalties are coming in. And right, you're exactly right. The penalty was extended from May 1st to July 15th. So for town taxes, town and county taxes. So they did have the opportunity to extend that, but it is the liens where we're getting a significant number of the penalties. And also
it.
when we roll over to lien in the summer, when we take the prior year's delinquent taxes and they become a lien, we actually recognize the revenue at that point for the penalties. So it gets rolled into a receivable, a long-term receivable for us, but we recognize the revenue at that point. So that's one source that we are definitely, back in April, number one, we weren't sure if people were going to be able to make tax payments. And we weren't sure if we were going to extend them, if we were going to waive penalties, what we were going to do. So we kind of thought, we may not see our budgetary number there, and it looks like we're going to, and we're going to probably exceed it pretty well. The next source is the county sales tax. And if everybody remembers at our budget discussion about a year ago, the county in August of 2019 increased the local sales tax by 1%, and in turn projected an increase to all the municipalities. At the time, they gave us a number, and obviously we couldn't have predicted COVID, but on the conservative to pessimistic viewpoint, we said, well, we probably won't get all of what the county says, so we kind of played that a little more conservative, and we budgeted 3.3 million. I think they were anticipating 3.5 or 3.6 or something they were expecting us to get. Well, it's a good thing that we budgeted a little bit lower, and it looks like we will reach that number. We did get our third quarter payment in, and after 3 quarters, we are just about 76 or 77% of our budget at this point. So the fourth quarter is typically the highest with the holidays and shopping at that time of year, provided we don't have any more of a shutdown. And it doesn't appear that we will. We do get revenue from online sales and those types of things. So I'm pretty comfortable to say at this point, based on where we are and what we're expecting for the fourth quarter, that we'll reach our budget number there. The next category, probably not so rosy, and that's our commuter parking and our parking meters. We've delayed those typically renew in June. We moved it to October, and we've now moved it to December in hopes of bringing in some revenue. I know we hadn't really publicized it, but we've begun to sell parking permits in December. I've got a number in there. I'm not sure that we'll reach that. I'm hopeful that we'll reach that, but I guess that remains to be seen now. We were hopeful that commuters would begin going back to the city maybe January 1. I'm not sure that will happen right now, but we're going to leave that as the estimate. And I think there's also some room in some of the other numbers that if we don't reach that, we're still okay. We'll still be on target. Summer camps and the rec programs, that really hasn't changed a heck of a lot from what we had projected back in April. We were able to run the summer camps, but as you can see, only at about a quarter of the revenue that we typically receive. And that estimate hasn't changed, and summer camps are over, so we don't expect more revenue there. Interest earnings, interest rates are extremely low at this point, so there's not a heck of a lot we can do, or not much that will change there. The building permits, that has come up in our estimates. And if you can see, what I projected back in April was about 712,000. We're already at 738 to date, and the building department's still extremely busy. So we are projecting probably not going to reach our budget at 950, but 850 is not too far off, considering everything we've gone through this year. Fines and forfeited bail. The courts were shut down for several months, and also with fewer people out on the road, there were fewer vehicle and traffic tickets. So we do expect that number to probably come in significantly less, probably about half of what was originally budgeted. Moving to mortgage tax, that's right now the real shining star for us. Back in April, we weren't sure if, there was going to be a housing market, if anybody was going to be able to show houses. We were locked down. And once we opened back up, we found that Newcastle was a pretty desirable place to come for anybody wanting to escape the city or some of the more denser cities or suburbs of the city. So, I think this number is borne out by our real estate agents, our title agents. Everybody has been telling us these numbers would be good, and we did get. I got the actual number, so the 1298 is not just an estimate; it is what we will receive for this year. So that's it's about 375,000 over budget. The last couple of categories, the state aid, the AIM, that payment comes in December. We do expect to receive that at this point. There was some question as to whether the state would be issuing those funds. We do believe we'll receive that at this point. And the last category for the general fund is the workers' comp dividend. And the budgetary number that I used for the last couple of years is the lowest. We went and looked at a 30-year history of the safety group to see what the dividend was. And the lowest one they've ever paid out was 20% of the premium. So that's what I've been budgeting. And our performance within the safety group has exceeded that. So our dividend exceeds our budget. And really the only category down under the highway fund, for purposes of this review, I've gone through the general and highway fund. There's not a lot of variance in water or refuse at this point. For the state aid CHIPS, we budgeted, I think, 223,000. That's what we typically get. We have found out they're going to add the Pave New York and the Extreme Winter Recovery Funds. They don't always do that, so we don't budget it, but they did this year. And even with the state reducing that number by about 20%, we still will receive about 252,000, should be higher than our budget. So if you look all the way across the bottom, the revenue deficits that I've been projecting, we went from about a $2.8 million revenue deficit to about 1.8 and now to about 1.285. Not that I want to extend 2020 any longer, but if we had a couple more months, maybe we'd even bring that down further. I'll just take a look now on the expense side. So there were a couple components in April. We said, well, there wasn't anything we could do about a lot of the revenue sources, but there were some things that we could do about the expenditure side to help reduce the overall net deficit. And I think we've done a good job with that. The town board, along with the town staff, implementing the town board's policies. We took a really close look at expenditures over $5,000. Department heads ran those by Jill and myself, and typically those went in front of the board, and we were really only making necessary purchases. The first category I'll talk about across the top is just some of the personnel changes. We had a couple positions that came vacant, and we either did not fill them altogether, or we filled them. We left them vacant for a little bit of time until we filled them, which brought us a little bit of savings. We did unfortunately have to reduce the part-time staff through the pandemic, and where you see a negative savings is actually the full-time position. So we kind of offset a little bit of the part-time savings. We did hire a full-time person there, and we hope kind of helps Christina without Mary Deems there. She was hurting for a little bit of time. It was just really Christina in the clerk's office. So we added the Lauren back as the deputy there, and we did add Irene as a full-time employee in that office. Police overtime is one category that we look to have some pretty good savings. We budgeted originally the chief, and this is the chief's number, was 322,000. back in April and September. We weren't sure how that was looking, so we did we thought we'd have some savings, but we wanted to make sure we left ourselves some room. And based on the year-to-date total of 180,000, I'm going to go with a conservative estimate for the end of the year of 245. I think we'll probably see more savings than that, but again, to be conservative, that nets us out about 77,000 at this point from police overtime. Going through the camps, the camp revenue is one source. Not all the revenue sources have a corresponding expense side to them, but the recreation and camps app definitely do, especially the camps, in particular the on-the-go camp. That's the camp where the kids go to baseball games and water parks and amusement parks and those types of things. The expenditures are pretty, there's not a lot of net profit in that. So that when we're not actually running the programs and we don't get the revenue, we also see a savings on the expense side. So if you look at the camp programs and the recreation programs that we weren't able to run this year, we're actually going to save almost $300,000. So that kind of offsets that revenue side that we didn't get. A couple lines that the town board had some discretion in were the consulting, master plan consulting, and town board special projects. I think the town board has elected not to use these funds this year. They're included in the budget again for next year, but that helps the savings this year. I will add one change to the master plan consulting. We did just approve about $5,000 for the rec master plan. For PACE, for the outreach, I believe. The assessor's office, we realized some savings there. Josh talked about the upgrade to PAS. We thought it was coming this year. It's actually not going to come until next year. So that gets shifted, and we're actually, we did find some money in the capital project, the IT capital upgrade. So that's actually going to come out of the operating budget altogether and be charged to the capital budget, which has already been funded in prior years. The property tax refund line, one line that we did have to increase in 2021 is we expect a couple of sizable tax certs. But that number, we typically budget at 100,000. If you look at the year to date, we've only had about $1,700 worth of tax refunds, and that goes along with what Josh just mentioned. That he's seen a reduction in SCARs and the tax certs. We probably again won't even reach 25,000 this year, but I'm going to at this point be conservative. That'll give us a savings of about 75,000 in that line alone. And just a couple other categories. The parking contractual services. These are the credit card fees that we typically have to pay that are associated with our Luke machine and the parking permits and the online parking permits. We're not going to have to pay those fees because we have not been using those. So one plus side there. In the contingency line, we budget 150 each year. We'll definitely need, that's kind of a space saver for any unexpected expenses. We'll actually use it as a buffer to kind of offset the revenue that we're not going to get. So for the general fund, I see a total savings right now versus a budget of about 891,000. Down in the highway, not a lot has changed. I did add one change to this projection from when we last talked, and highway department overtime is actually going to exceed budget. Right now, it's about 108,000, which is about 28,000 over budget. I'm projecting it'll probably go to 120. We've had a significant storm back in July, August, and again over last weekend, and that's required quite a bit of overtime from our crews having to clear the roads. So not much we can do there, but it definitely is offset by the mild winter that we had in the beginning of the year, January, February, and March. We have a savings of about 200,000 over budget for the salt and the snow plowing overtime. And to wrap it up, I'll just shift all the way to this last to the combination. So you see on the bottom here where we estimate the total net deficit, it went from 1.6 to 840. Now the total net deficit of the combined funds is 233,000. It actually ends up with a general fund net deficit of about 422,000, and I'm projecting a surplus actually in the highway fund right now of 189,000. Again, these projections are some of the categories that have some of the largest variances. There's obviously quite a few budget lines, and there's pluses and minuses up and down the budget. I have highlighted what I have thought were the most significant, and again, being conservative, we're probably going to be better off than this number that I gave you, but I feel confident that we can reach the number that I'm giving you.
So Rob, just walk me through when the year ends and we know that we will still have a net deficit at the end of the year.
So
Our
what-
intention then at that time is to transfer from fund balance to make up that difference, and we make that decision, we do that maneuver after the end of the year.
So it's not necessarily a decision. So we typically don't close out the year until about February because we still have bills that are coming in that get charged back to the prior year. And we still have revenue sources that are coming in, sales tax, some of the concession money that come in after the beginning of the year. So we close out the year typically at the end of February. Our auditors then come in and audit our books and then help prepare the financial statements. They determine what our surplus or deficit happens to be. At that point, it's not really a decision what to do. You're drawing money, basically out of your savings account, out of fund balance. So when revenues exceed expenses, we add money to the fund balance. When expenses exceed revenues, we're then drawing money from the fund balance. And that will be, I will give you another projection in February. I'll have a good idea where things sit. The auditors come in, there are always several entries that they make that change the exact number that we're either adding to fund balance or taking from fund balance. But we'll have a pretty good idea at that time.
Got it. Can I just ask, with regard to the town board special projects line, I noticed that it was budgeted 25,000. We've spent 5,400. I think that's the movie, right? That we did.
So I'd have
Right.
to
But anyway, I noticed that we still are projecting a total expenditure there of 15,000.
again,
That's-
not necessarily anything that I know, just leaving some
Okay.
room there.
No,
Yeah.
I think that's wise. I was just going to say to that point, we saw last month the presentations from the CRE and from their work groups, and I am working with them right now to try to get them to come up with sort of the short list of what some quick wins or low hanging fruit might look like from that very long list that they presented to us of recommendations. So I do expect that, and I don't know what the number is just yet. Obviously, because the board will need to discuss it. But I just want to put that in everybody's, flag that for everybody, that that's still something to come. Not just for next year, but I think for this year too, to the extent that they can identify some of those things that are, like I said, quick wins.
Yeah, so that's what there wasn't anything spoken for at this point in my numbers, just leaving the board a little discretion and still coming up with a projection.
Great.
Okay. Great. Thank you, Rob.
This
We're
is
two
really
for two today.
tremendous. And I mean, thank you, Jill and Rob, both for your leadership this year and the incredible job that you guys did to reduce expenses and to rein in our spending. It's actually really remarkable that we were able to close this gap the way that we did over the course of the year. If anybody had told me back in April that the total deficit would look the way it does, 233, I think it said, I can't remember,
Yeah.
but that's
Combined. the net,
amazing.
yeah.
That's really incredible. You guys are great.
No one's ever made deficit look so good.
You know, it's funny, this morning, we were referring to as only an $840,000 deficit. And it's only when you start working with 1.6 million as a deficit, do you consider 840, only. So, even coming down like 233 is clearly a significant number. If it was in my budget, my personal budget, I wouldn't be talking to you guys. But we're able to keep it under control, but our staff is phenomenal, and we will pass along your thanks to them. We couldn't have done it without them, clearly.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, Vivek, are you still with us?
I am.
Okay, so we're going to shift gears a little bit to the Westchester Power mailer. Was here, not here, almost here.
Hey, I am here. I'm sorry, I was finishing up another.
Okay. Okay. I know Steve was perhaps going to join us, but I don't see him on. So SAB, as you know, has been working diligently with Westchester Power to come up with a mailing for the town. I know that Westchester Power will be sending out to our residents a template that was sent to all the municipalities, which is not necessarily the easiest read for our community to understand where we are. And so Vivek has undertaken the task from SAB to take and give us a kinder, gentler, more readable explanation to what our energy purchasing options look like going forward. Vivek, do you just want to talk about the mailer a little bit and the little explanatory paragraph that's going to be in the upcoming e-newsletter tomorrow?
Sure. So first off, from the Sustainability Advisory Board's perspective, and I've been authorized by Stephen and Jennifer to speak on their behalf. So I'll keep it short because I don't want to misspeak on their behalf. From the Sustainability Advisory Board's perspective, the 100% renewable electricity purchase is part of the mission of the board, and so that's why they're supportive of this contract continuing for the next 18 months. From a messaging perspective, it's important that everyone in the town understands what they're receiving, and to Jill's point, the Westchester Power document was a little unclear, and we thought it was important that the town have a mailer that more crisply points out who needs to do what, right? And the bottom line is the vast majority of town residents will not need to do anything because the vast majority of town residents are currently buying their electricity supply from Westchester Power, and are going to continue to do that with this new contract. They have nothing to do. There is a small subset, about 10% of the town's population, that has previously opted out of the Westchester Power contract and either gone back to buying their supply from Con Ed under the variable rates, or from a third party, from another ESCO. And that 10% will also not need to do anything, because if they had previously opted out, they are continuing to be opted out. So you shouldn't have very many people from the town having to do anything to change their preferences. But there is always the potential that the mailer causes some confusion and concern, and there is, in our age of social media, there is the potential for anything to blow up, and so it's important, we thought, that we have a few different media of modes of communication, and this letter we thought was something that the town can send out. I think, Jill, you were saying you want to send it out with the refuse calendar,
Right. That's going to be so the plan was SAB has created just a nice summary paragraph that's going to be included in tomorrow's e-newsletter. It's going to have a link to this letter that's in front of the board for their perusal. Please look at it, make I know it's been circulated, just we have received some comments. Ivy had some comments and some questions. I believe they've been addressed. If
Can
anyone
I
else
just
does.
ask you, I know
Sure.
because I put this in, I did review it, and I provided you my comments, and then you very kindly provided me responses that I didn't look at. So how's that for honesty? So I do have just one question for you, Vivek, about the draft that we have in front of us. In the past, all of Newcastle was opted in, right? And we all became a part of Westchester Power, and then you had to opt out. There's an FAQ in here that says, I just moved to town, and am I automatically enrolled in Westchester Power? And it says, no, you have to reach out. So is that a policy change that going forward, residents have to now opt in to Westchester Power?
So what Westchester Power told me is that they haven't got a final determination on how they plan to move forward. But for now, new residents will not automatically be opted in between now and December 31st. They are in the midst of having the conversations to see if there is a way to identify who these new residents are. Their problem is that they don't know who has previously opted out and who is a new resident. So it's easy to opt everybody out, opt everybody back in, or to just keep the status quo as it is. And so their solution that they think they're going to be addressing is manually go through the list and say, here are the 35, 40, 50 new residents that have moved in who haven't actively opted out, and then actually send them, customized, targeted messages. That's their plan for now, but they're still in the process of formulating it, and that will go out in January, not along with this mailer.
So once we're into 2021 and we're well into the new contract, do we know if the intention is that new residents will have to continue to opt in, or will we go back to the default?
They haven't made that decision. They're still reviewing what they're allowed to do and what they can what's easy for them to do. So I don't have the answer for that yet, and they don't have the answer for that yet. They said they think that what they're going to end up is that new residents will have to actively opt in the future.
I'm really worried about, I'm sure you and Steve and Jennifer will push really hard on this, but I'm really concerned that that's going to greatly reduce their participation in this program, and we're not going to see the same results that we've been able to realize over the past several years as a result of the fact that it was an opt-out as opposed to an opt-in.
Right, Ivy, my suggestion is let's wait till they figure out what they want to do, and then we can add to their efforts by helping, either using the realtors to target people as they buy and move into the into town, or other approaches. But let's wait for them to figure out what they want to do before we formulate our plan.
That's fair. I don't need to do their job for them. We've got enough on our plates.
Point well taken. So let me just go back to our plan. So our plan is paragraph in our article in our e-newsletter tomorrow with a link towards this letter. We were going to do a code red later in the week, again with a link to this letter. And then the letter is going to be sent out in our refuse and recycling calendar that gets sent out to everyone at the beginning of December. And that way we have, blanketed our town with a mailing that we believe people will actually open and retain, because that's one of the few pieces of mail that we actually send people that everybody holds on to. Everybody wants to know when their garbage is going to get picked up. So we're going to piggyback onto that. SAB does a mailer annually, insert into that mailing anyway. I've circulated those to the town board. You should just look through them so that we can get them to the printer and out. And that's all I have. Any other questions for Vivek or SAB or anything? Thanks so much for taking this on. We really, really appreciate it.
Happy to help.
Okay, all right. The next thing I've got on our agenda, Vivek, you're welcome to join us. Otherwise,
Thank you.
we'll completely understand. Auctions International. Jeremy, we are looking at just under $46,000 of revenue for surplus sale of vehicles that we no longer need. And the next thing on the agenda is just an administrative item. Again, we've asked our departments when there's any large purchases to please bring them to our attention. And there is an $8,000 purchase that's just waiting for the board's okay for water meters. With the new residences that are going to be at 91 Bedford Road and the Conifer project, we need to increase our supply of water meters. They're buying 40 new radio controlled water meters for the buildings. And so it ends up being an $8,400 expenditure. There is money in the water budget for it, but I've asked everyone that any expenditures over $5,000 have to come through the town board for approval. So,
Do we get reimbursed for those from the building? I'm assuming yes.
Rob, do we get reimbursed for it or?
Why, I was about to ask, why do we pay for that? Why do we?
Because we want them to have separate water meters. We don't want one in the building.
Well, yeah, but
Why
shouldn't
is
the
that our bill?
developer pay for that?
I think we might get reimbursed for that.
First. Yeah, all I know is that we insist upon separate water meters for each of the apartments, not one for the building. We don't want there to be a situation where, you know, where we can't turn off water if for non-payment because you're shutting off the entire building.
If it's not being paid for by the business owner or the.
It actually sounds like it is. Yeah.
It is, we should legislate that they must.
Yeah, I can get you an answer on that.
Can you confirm that, please, Jill? Thanks.
Yes.
And if not, we need to look how we can rectify it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, typically this would be something that's handled in your town code. I'm just looking on eCode right now to see if I can get a quick answer for you.
Yeah, I think it actually may be in the master fee schedule. for the
Oh,
water
okay.
meters.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Usually
There is
it's
a
either one or
There's a
the other.
charge. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, there should be. And if there isn't, that's something that should be corrected in the code or the fee schedule.
Yeah.
I
Master fee schedule rings a bell to me.
like his email even said that. I'm trying to. It doesn't say that in the memo, but I thought I did hear him sound.
They're for stock, Julian, yeah, stock things.
Can we confirm before we?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well,
So section 131-31 of your code, that's in the water chapter. It says meters shall be purchased from the district and will be installed by the water department. So that suggests to me that the person using the meter would be purchasing them from the
in
town.
the district, yeah.
Yeah,
Shall as opposed to so. Shall is must.
Yep.
Okay.
And then there's probably a, like Jill said, there's probably an entry in the fee schedule. Governing
Yeah,
what the
because-
charge is.
But we should make
Right.
sure the fee schedule correlates with the actual cost of the meters.
Okay.
Jen, should we look at that legislation? And pardon me, is that language appropriate to you?
I think it is. We'll take a closer look at it and compare it to some of the other, some other language in other codes to see if it's something that can be cleaned up. But I think it makes it clear that it's, that it's not to be the town's expense.
Yeah,
And
just
one of the
shall.
reasons why we put, the cost of the water meters in the fee schedule is because it's easy to change it by resolution as opposed to if it was in the legislation. Every time, we have to up it, it's another public hearing and a notice and a local law. So
Yep.
this is something that we review every year and we approve with the organizational minutes, which will be coming soon, right, guys? Organizational minutes, right? Yeah, okay.
Oh.
Yep. Great. Okay, we have a number of proposed actions and resolutions for the board. We ready?
Sure.
All right.
I move to adopt the following monthly reports for October 2020, Town Clerk, Court Clerk, Development Department, and Receiver of Taxes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I move to authorize the appointment of the following members to the Police Reform and Reinvention Collaboration Committee, also known as PRRCC, effective November 18th of this fabulous year. Craig Davenport, Joanna Robinson Nayar, Angela Broner Helm, Kimberly Carey, Purcell Welsh, Carlos Ramirez, and Dara Nayar.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And we're excited to have them. I move to accept the retirement resignation from Donna Lee Espirito, Recreation Supervisor 2 within the Recreation and Parks Department, effective November 7th, 2020. The town would like to thank Donna for her 34 years, which is certainly a lot of dedicated service. So thank you on behalf of all of us.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I move to authorize the posting and hiring for the position of laborer 0425-05 within the Department of Public Works.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I move to accept the following results from Auctions International, which have all been accepted with total proceeds of $45,595 as listed below.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I move to establish capital project H.8330.0400.8090.2020 for the complete turnkey replacement of 2 boilers at the Millwood Water Treatment Plant with a total budget of $325,000. This project will be funded entirely with the transfer from the SW Consolidated Water District.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I move to establish capital project H.8710.0400.8091.2020 with a total project budget of $1.5 million for the decommissioning, removal of the Western Dam Wall, aka Upper Minkle Dam. The funding source for this project is not yet finalized. The Development Department is currently working to secure grant funding from FEMA and Westchester County, but the amounts are not yet guaranteed. A transfer of $144,500 from the Tree Bank in the Expendable Trust Fund is being earmarked for this project to cover the costs of supplies for the riparian restoration once the dam is removed. Whatever grant funds we do not secure, the balance will be funded with serial bond proceeds from our next bond issuance intended to take place in 2021 or 2022. The debt associated with any borrowed funds will be repaid entirely by the general fund.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I move to authorize the Controller's Office to close the 2012 IT equipment upgrade capital project based on verification that the project is complete and no further expenditures are expected. There is no fund balance remaining on this project, and the town controller concurs with this request and recommends corrective action be taken so the project can be closed out in accordance with audit guidelines by adjusting budget to actual figures as outlined in the attached memo from his office dated November 13th, 2020.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I move to authorize the Controller's Office to close the 2016 IT equipment upgrade capital project based on the verification that the project is complete and no further expenditures are expected. For review of the attached final project, trial balance of as of December 31st, 2017, the Controller's Office identified that there is no fund balance remaining in this project. Further, Town Controller Robert Deary concurs with this request, and since the amounts are the same, no entries are required to adjust the budget to actual figures. However, in accordance with audit guidelines, a resolution is required to record the official closing of this project for record-keeping purposes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I move to authorize Controller's Office to close purchase GPS vehicle tracking units capital project based on verification that the project is complete and no further expenditures are expected. Per the final trial balance of December 31st, 2013. Again, the Controller's Office has identified there is no fund balance at this point. Furthermore, our Town Controller concurs with this request and recommends corrective action be taken so the project can be closed out in accordance with audit guidelines by adjusting the budget to actual figures as outlined in the attached memo dated November 13th of this year.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I move to authorize Controller's Office to close out the Amsterdam Ball Field number 2 capital project based on verification the project is complete and no further expenditures are expected. As per the project trial balance of December 31st, 2013, the Controller's Office identified there is no fund balance. Furthermore, our Controller concurs and recommends corrective action be taken so that this project can be closed out in accordance with the guidelines by adjusting budgets to actual figures as outlined in the attached memo from his office dated, guess what, guys, November 13th, 2020.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Oh.
One more of these. I move to authorize the Comptroller's Office to close the High Ridge Road Waterline Improvements Capital Project based on verification that the project is complete and no further expenditures are expected. Per view, the attached final project trial balance as of December 31st, 2013, the Comptroller's Office has identified a project fund balance, project revenues minus project expenditures of $113,114.35, $50,000 of which will be returned to the SW Consolidated Water District, and the town is obligated to return the remaining $63,114.35 to the SW4H Ridge Road Water District to be reserved to pay the debt associated with the 2013 serial bond issuance. Further, Town Controller Robert Deary concurs with this request and recommends corrective action be taken so that the project can be closed out in accordance with the audit guidelines by adjusting budget to actual figures with modifications to the capital fund, SW and SW4 districts as outlined in the attached memo from his office dated November 13, 2020.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thinking we're going to table number 13
Okay.
till next week. Okay.
Lauren, that was one of your record fast ones. That was really
That was
fast.
really good.
That was really fast.
Also, I like how that last one, they did identify a project fund balance. It totally threw me off.
All right, so
See?
we adjourn?
No, we're going to adjourn into executive session
Right, correct.
Yay.
for advice of counsel, personnel and contracts.
So moved.
So moved.
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.